solutions and green infrastructure. My name is Megan Chow. I am one of the coordinators for IURC Korea specifically, and I'm also a program officer at CityNet who is organizing today's thematic webinar. So before we begin, I would like to start by showing all of you the agenda really briefly. After me, we'll follow with opening remarks from the CEO of CityNet, and then John Bogertz from the EUD delegation in Korea will set the scene for us, and then we'll follow with two panel discussions moderated by Pablo, Gandara, and Jens Blake, and then we'll close the webinar for today. Oops. So before we start, if I can ask everybody to please change your display name to your city and your name, that would be really helpful for us. We would love to see where you're all from and to see what kind of cities are represented here at the webinar today. And secondly, please kindly mute your mic unless you are being recognized to speak. This will really help everybody with a smooth webinar experience. Thirdly, interpretation is available for this webinar in English and Korean. Some of our panelists will be presenting in Korean, so please be sure to stay in the English channel if you'd like to listen to English, and in the Korean channel if you'd like to listen to Korean. Fourth, as you've all heard already, this webinar is being recorded. Thank you very much for your cooperation on this. And finally, slides will be made available on the IURC website following this webinar. Please be patient. It may take a few days for them to be uploaded, but rest assured we will upload them. So without further ado, then please let me introduce the CEO of CityNet. His name is Keun-young Im, and he is a former ambassador. And he has been serving as the CEO of CityNet since January 2020. He has served as the ambassador to Denmark as well as to Hungary, and was actually awarded the Commander's Cross of the Order of Merit of Hungary for his contribution to promoting Korea-Hungary relations. He believes that smart city policies and climate change response are really important, and that city-to-city cooperation is essential to resolving these key issues. So without further ado, Mr. Keun-young Im.
Okay. Thank you, Megan, for your kind and superb introduction. Good morning and good afternoon to everyone. Well, on behalf of CityNet, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to the webinar addressing climate change effect in cities. This webinar is the first thematic webinar of the International Urban and Regional Cooperation Program, Asia and Australasia, a program of the European Union. CityNet is excited to partner with IURC as the regional coordinator for the Republic of Korea. Our thanks goes out to the EU delegation for this opportunity to participate in this project. CityNet is an international organization that focuses on sustainable development in the Asia Pacific, supporting local authorities to build people-centered, resilient, and inclusive cities. We view this cooperation with the EU in the IURC program as an excellent opportunity to deepen international cooperation between the EU and regions around the world, especially here in Asia and Australasia. Today's webinar will be covering a topic that has been particularly salient as the rate of urbanization increases and the temperature of the earth continues to rise. To achieve the SDGs by 2030 and act against climate change, cities must act first, or sharing some of their best practices. Today's webinar will feature panelists from 9 different cities, sharing some of their best practices on how they are combating climate change effect in cities, specifically urban heat islands and the flooding after heavy rainfall. For cities, these are challenges that have become increasingly more difficult as rising global temperature causes sea levels to rise and increase extreme weather events, such as floods and storms. Many cities present here experience or have experienced the urban heat island phenomenon or flooding and heavy rainfall in the past year. I hope that through this webinar, pilot cities in the IURC program will be able to replicate best practices showcased here to address climate change on a local level in their own cities. Through the combined efforts of everyone involved in the webinar today, we can take concrete steps towards building more sustainable, resilient cities for our future through global cooperation and partnership. My very sincere congratulations to the IURC program, and especially the IURC Asia Australasia team on the launch of the program. This project marks a milestone in cooperation between CityNet and the EU delegation in Korea, and we look forward to deeper cooperation in the future. Finally, I would like to express my best wishes and expectation that this webinar will just be the beginning of a very successful international cooperation program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, CEO Him, for that very inspiring speech. And next, I'd like to pass the floor to the Deputy Head of Delegation. Sorry, give me a moment, please. The Deputy Head of Delegation of the EU, of the EUD in Korea, and that's Mr. John Rogerts, who has been serving as the Deputy Head of Delegation and Head of the Political Press and Information Section at the EUD to Korea since August 2020. He has a long and extensive history in public service, and we're very lucky to have him here to deliver some opening remarks and set the scene. So without further ado, John, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Megan, and good afternoon and good morning to everyone from the EU delegation to Korea. It's an honor for me to be here with you and to set the scene a little bit and to say a few words on what the EU has to offer in terms of climate change and cities. It's an honor to be here at the inception of this project, and like the speaker before me, I hope we can have many more occasions like this, and this will be only the start of a fruitful cooperation. So thank you very much to the colleagues at CityNet, at the IURC project team for organizing today's first cross-regional thematic webinar under this project. Last week we already had a kickoff meeting for the EU-Korea city pairings. These city pairings include Seoul, Dublin, Busan and Rotterdam, my favorite Dutch city, as well as Sejong City and Sofia. So delegation, we very much look forward to working with you and to making this project a success. Setting the scene a little bit, I can say what I've said before quite a number of times, that cities are at the forefront of climate change adaptation and mitigation, and that rapid urbanization is making people increasingly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. Today, more than half the world's population live in cities, and in 30 years, an additional 2.5 billion people are expected to live in cities. Already today, as we have seen over the summer, unfortunately, the frequency of torrential rains, floodings, and heat waves is on the rise in big, densely populated areas, hitting those living in marginalized, informal settlements hardest. As the EU, we have committed ourselves to climate neutrality by 2050, and cities will play a pivotal role in achieving this objective. Today, cities consume over 65% of the world's energy and account for more than 70% of global CO2 emissions. At the European Union delegation to Korea, we attach a lot of priority on working with cities. Just recently, a few weeks ago, we closed our EU-Korea Climate Action Program, which focused to a large extent on cooperation with local authorities. And last week, I had the honor to present the EU's climate strategy at the Urban Environmental Accord Summit in Yeosu. Climate change, biodiversity loss, and degradation of ecosystems are closely linked and all have devastating consequences for our economic and social stability, health, and well-being. By protecting, sustainably managing, and restoring ecosystems, we can work with nature to efficiently tackle these growing and interdependent challenges. Given the potential of nature-based solutions, the EU's 2030 biodiversity strategy, a key pillar of our Green Deal, includes a nature restoration plan that can boost the uptake of nature-based solutions. Proposed actions include protecting and restoring wetlands, peatlands, coastal and marine ecosystems, as well as developing urban green spaces and installing green roofs and walls. We believe that research and innovation will be key drivers for transforming our economies and societies. Our program, Horizon Europe, is the EU's key funding program for research and innovation, and it comes with a budget of close to 96 billion euros for a 7-year period. It tackles climate change, helps to achieve the UN's SDGs, and boosts the EU's competitiveness and growth. And we hope to, in the not too long future, associate Korea to this important research framework program. The Horizon Europe program includes a specific focus also on cities, and together with local authorities, citizens, businesses, investors, as well as regional and national authorities, the Horizon Europe's city mission seeks to deliver 100 climate neutral and smart cities by 2030. These cities will act as experimentation and innovation hubs to enable all European cities to follow suit by 2050. So in closing, I just want to wish you interesting, productive exchanges today, and I do hope very much that it will generate new ideas for cooperation and pilot actions between the EU and Asian cities on climate action. So thanks again for having me. We are very happy to be able to be part of this and to be supportive of this project. And let me now close by asking Megan to show a short video on climate neutral and smart cities mission of the EU. Thank you very much.
Today I woke up early. It was so hot that I couldn't sleep. We got into our car. I get so bored there. I can't even open the windows. We finally got to school, but if we could just play outside. But what if we lived in a different city? What if my house was different? What if we could fly to school? And what if we could play outside? Is this a dream? I'd rather think this is a mission. Actually, it's our mission. Our mission, green cities. By and for the citizens. Did you know that 80% of European citizens live in cities? So jump on board.
Okay, thank you so much, John, for that very inspiring speech and sharing just how important it really is for cities to look into nature-based solutions and to focus on achieving the SDGs by 2030 to create more livable and green cities for all of us, especially backed up by that video. I think that's a future all of us want to see, and I think that's why we're all gathered here today to discuss nature-based solutions. So without any further ado, I'd like to move on to the next panel actually, and let me take some time to introduce our panelists for today. Our very first panel will be on urban heat islands and nature-based solutions to mitigate urban heat islands. So we're very lucky to have 4 panelists from 4 different cities. Mr. Wonju Kim from Seoul Institute representing Seoul, from the Republic of Korea, Ms. Sofia Castillo from Think City, representing Penang, Malaysia, Mr. Imano Zavalata from the Center for Environmental Studies representing Vitoria-Gasteiz, Spain. And finally, Mr. Marino Cavallo from the Metropolitan City of Bologna, representing Bologna and Imola, Italy. And this panel will be moderated by none other than our very own team leader for IURC Asia and Australasia, Pablo Gandara. So Pablo, I'll pass the floor to you for your first panel.
Yes, thank you very much, Megan. Sorry, I'm not able to share my screen now. Maybe I can get the right from the colleagues. Now it's working. That's fine. Thank you. And just one technical issue. Imanol from Vitoria-Gasteiz just contacted me and asking to get permission to join the meeting. So maybe technically you can allow him to join the meeting. So thank you very much. After having said this, I would just like to briefly set the scene for the next 35 minutes. Basically, just allow me 5 minutes to introduce briefly the program and the goal of this meeting today. As explained before by Megan, and especially by John and by the ambassador, we are a program, a regional program of the European Union implemented for the cooperation between 35 cities in Asia and Australasia. As you can see over here, and 45 cities from the European Union. And actually, we're part of a much larger picture of international city-to-city cooperation being implemented also in the Americas as well as in China. And we are coordinated by colleagues from Brussels with a very strong support also from the DG Regio, and our program is managed by the foreign policy instruments of the European Union. The program, as you all know, tries to support concrete pilot actions among cities. And herefore, we have also identified specific clusters, thematic clusters. And these clusters, as you may see over there, are basically along 3 big thematic networks. Basically everything dealing with, let's say, the Green Deal and the ecological transition of cities. Then the second thematic network dealing with urban renewal and social aspects of urban development, sustainable urban development, focusing also on issues like mobility. And a third one dealing more with, let's say, the economic part, the economic transition of cities towards sustainable development. Our program, of course, takes place within the framework of much larger challenges that cities and societies are facing. Of course, the post-COVID recovery has to be mentioned, but also the climate change and the smart city and digital transition. So today's webinar is going to be the very first one in a row of webinars that's going to take place every 2 weeks on different topics of this area. So today's objectives is to basically to showcase at an international level some very specific solutions and challenges from IURC pilot cities. So this webinar is open for participation of the pilot cities of the IURC. And the idea is basically to address these 2 challenges that were mentioned before by the speakers: heavy rainfall, flooding, as well as heat islands, but also to identify potential pilot areas and stakeholders, partners, to address these challenges on a city level. So ideally, we will try to end up by this meeting, and after the 20 minutes presentations we're going to have in this panel 1, the idea is to identify some areas and to try to inspire other cities to follow, to transfer knowledge. And so therefore, we're going to have about 10 minutes discussion for afterwards. So coming back to the topic, as John mentioned before, cities are, of course, the one facing most, the most severe consequences of climate change. I'm originally from Germany. As you can see, this is quite close to my hometown in the German-Dutch-Belgian border. And we saw in this just 3 months ago the heavy rainfalls, the heavy falls in exactly in the border area between Germany, the Netherlands, and Belgium, which caused more than 200 victims and damages of several dozens of billions of euros. So, of course, we all are very well aware of the negative consequences of climate change for cities, and therefore, already the European Union, through the IUC program and the first phase, so to say, of the IURC in the past few years, we worked together with the United Nations, specifically with the Commission for Asia Pacific, within this so-called Future of Asian Pacific Cities report. And on that one, the EU supported specifically a chapter dealing with nature-based solutions and with resilience in cities. So I just invite you to have a look at that, because there are already some recommendations about what cities can do in order to strengthening resilience by using, of course, nature-based solutions. And the latest report of the IPCC, it's quite clear with regards to the effects of climate change on cities and what we can actually do there. Having a look at what is happening in the European Union, and John mentioned that before, the EU is doing a lot of support cities to get green infrastructure done, to implement nature-based solutions. Nevertheless, we can see that here, as this map from the European Spatial Planning Institute Observatory, ESPON, shows, European cities also saw a decrease in green areas between 2006 and 2012, as we can see over here. So European cities, as you can see over here, they're pretty green, with a lot of green cities with more than 80 or even 90% of the city being green spaces. Nevertheless, we saw a decrease in this development over the past in the period 2006 to 2012. The reason for that is, of course, new urban developments which were partly unsustainable. So also in the EU, we have to do a lot of things to improve green infrastructure, and we're getting a good support, I think, by the EU on this. So here, as John mentioned before, green infrastructure, nature-based solutions means, of course, areas like flood alleviation, water retention walls that you just saw in the picture I showed you before, or maybe even other solutions. It is important, I think, to emphasize that green infrastructure, nature-based solutions can also create jobs and interesting business opportunities, as we can see in a few examples I will show you in a moment. However, the challenge, I think it's quite important that it's basically not yet so much implemented in cities as it should be. So purely technical approaches are still on vogue, but nature-based solutions can actually make a very good contribution as well. Here, for example, you see a high-level delegation from Chinese experts we had in Europe back in 2017, where the city of Lisbon and Almada and Vienna showed some examples. Here also an example in Singapore, where basically an area in the Pishang and Muang Kio Park in Singapore has been revitalized by the Danish company Rainfall there, trying to create flood adaptable solutions for that. So I think this is the way it looks before, and this is the way it looks now. So quite different. You see natural restoration, and then back also giving to people places to also work with each other. So that's basically my short thematic introduction. I'm very happy to have the next 20 minutes for discussion with 4 very experienced colleagues from both Asia and Europe. So I would like to start first with the first presentation by Mr. Won-Yu Kim from the Seoul Institute. So we'd be very happy if Mr. Kim could take over. Thank you very much.
네, 방금 소개받은 김원주라고 합니다.
Hello, my name is Won-Ju Kim. I have been working in the Seoul Institute for 16 years so far, doing the research on the green area part. Today, what I'll be discussing will be about the green area, and among that, I'll be typically speaking about the roof gardening project, how we have done so far, and what we are going to do in the future. Okay, next slide, please. The rooftop garden is providing a healing area in everyday life. And this area also alleviates the fine dust and alleviate the heat island phenomenon. And regarding our topic today, the green top roof garden provides an area for the residents to take rest. And also it reduces the energy savings in the building. And we have seen those results through many research papers. Next slide, please. Heat island phenomena we'll be able to see through map. Since 1987 to 2003, we have done 2 experiments, and you can clearly see with the difference in colors. So as the time passes, more and more cities drove more cars, and as the buildings emit a lot of energy and gas, the land, you can see the map is getting red and red. And in 2018, this is the map that shows the temperature in daily basis. You can see that the upper part is being red and orange. Of course, there are some differences between autonomous district, but the area which have buildings and cars have show the big portion of the heat island. Next slide, please. In the next slide, we will be able to see the compare between Seoul area and Gyeonggi province, which is outside the Seoul. And we have compared this using the UHI intensity. So Seoul is urban city and suburban refers to Gyeonggi province area. We can see that the difference in average temperature between urban and suburban reaches about 0.56 degrees Celsius, and that figure gets bigger and bigger. If we look at the administrative tone level, we see much bigger gap. So the heat island phenomenon should be well monitored, and we need to come up with the measure. Next slide, please. In order to tackle these issues, we have thought of green oasis and cooling space. This is very much necessary to tackle the issue. For the rooftop garden, we can, rather than using the rooftop garden, we can create this area as the garden area. And if we create the rooftop as the garden, we'll be able to see the 3 degrees Celsius lower than other buildings. And the cooling and heating energy of building is reduced by an average of 12 to 15%. And if the temperature is above 35 degrees Celsius, energy is saved up to 17%. And if the garden of the area is about 100 square meters and a depth of 10 centimeters, we'll be able to store about 200 liters of rainwater. And also, many insects and birds will come into this rooftop garden. Next slide, please. The Seoul city relies on the Seoul Metropolitan Government Ordinance on Urban Greening. And when we do the urban greening, the city of Seoul provides subsidy for urban green projects. So when we create this green rooftop garden, we'll be able to use the subsidy from the city of Seoul. And this project includes making street trees and others. But among that, according to the plan, we'll be able to create rooftop garden as well under the plan. So we have been doing this project for a long time. Next slide, please. If we look at here, the project has been done since 2002 until last year. So it's about 44 times of the soccer field, which is very large. Next slide, please. So these are the cases that we have done so far. So by making the rooftop as the garden area, you'll be able to see we've done this in the Gangnam-gu Health Center and Broadcasting Station. Next slide, please. And also, we also did this area where the kids play. And for these areas, we provide the certification mark. Next slide, please. This is the solo 7017, where there are so many trees being planted. And in connection with the solo 7017, we have created the Seoul Station parking lot as the rooftop garden of Seoul Station. This was our last year's big project. Next slide, please. So in City of Seoul, Seoul plans to implement 1,000 green roof projects. So far, we have provided 50% of subsidy, but the figure will increase to 70%. So this was the revision of the ordinance. So this shows our more will to creating the garden at the rooftop. And in this year, we plan to have 23 buildings, including the Supreme Court building. And next slide, please. And this is my last slide. So for the rooftop, there can be many areas being created. So we can also install solar energy facilities. And because these works were done in many of the departments in City of Seoul, we had really difficulty in cooperating and coordinating. So we found out that we need more cooperation between the related departments on a creation. And once it's being implemented, continuous monitoring is really important to monitor how much the heat island is being alleviated, and also promoting toward the citizens is very important. This ends up my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you very, very much, Mr. Kim, for these very interesting, inspiring examples. Having achieved already over 9,000 square meters of green rooftop gardens in Seoul. Quite an impressive also best practice, the Solo 7017 project. Maybe we can discuss it later about the train station at Seoul City Center. Yeah, very impressive, very interesting. So I would like now to hand over to the second speaker. She comes from Penang in Malaysia. That's Sophia. Sophia, please introduce yourself and go ahead.
Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. Oh, Megan, you are sharing the screen. I thought I was supposed to share. Never mind. It's okay.
I'll share for you.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. So I'm here to present the nature-based climate adaptation program for the urban areas of Penang Island. This is the first climate adaptation program to be developed for a city in Malaysia. It was initiated in 2019 by Think City, UN Habitat, the local city council, and the drainage and irrigation department from Penang. So the goals are to use nature-based solutions to reduce climate change impacts in Penang, reducing threats to human life, infrastructure, and property. It is science-driven, not only in terms of design, but also in terms of results and assessment of impacts. Next. Penang is already facing very big challenges, climate-related challenges. The temperatures are increasing substantially. Here you can see remote sensing data on surface temperatures, and we can see a stark increase. So the minimum temperature has increased 2.4 degrees and the maximum 8.7 degrees. This obviously is surface temperatures, is not atmosphere temperatures. What the data tells us is that in terms of atmosphere temperatures, the increase is of 1.5, which is substantial. It's way above what was expected. Next. We can see that this increase that we are seeing in Georgetown is also related to green spaces. We can actually almost identify the streets that have trees because they are linear elements with lower temperatures. Next. So this is basically a combination of climate change and increased temperatures, but also of increased built areas. This is due to the urban heat island effect that increases temperatures between 2 and 8 degrees above surrounding natural and rural areas. And obviously cities, by developing and increasing built up area, create these conditions in which temperatures are obviously more extreme. Next. The climate adaptation program has 4 components. One is focused on using nature-based solutions to reduce temperatures. The second is focused on reducing flooding by improving stormwater management using nature-based solutions as well, upstream retention, and bull-green corridors. And there is a third component, which is social vulnerability. So we identify vulnerable communities and we empower them and provide data and support for extreme weather events. We also have a fourth component, which is focused on addressing gaps in institutional capacity. This is actually a very interesting component because we have a knowledge transfer platform, the creation of a knowledge transfer platform that not only shares the knowledge of the project, but also assesses the impacts, the reduction of impacts, and mainstreams the information to all cities in Malaysia and in the region. We have the creation of the Penang Climate and Disaster Risk Board, and we have a public health program for detection of heat stress and heat stroke in 2 public hospitals in Penang, one in the island and the other one in mainland. Next. The nature-based solutions are diverse, the ones we use. And in terms of reducing the urban heat island effect, we also have rooftop gardens as in a solution that's very similar to what Mr. Kim has presented. But we have it as a grants program. So we have 20 pilot projects for this. Because obviously most buildings are not public owned, and we need to build capacity and work with the property owners to develop different types of projects. We also use this grants approach for green facades, precisely for the same reason. The main green project in terms of impacts is the street trees project and the connected canopies project, because we know that street trees, when planned strategically to reduce temperatures, are the most effective. Basically, what we're doing is blocking the radiation from reaching the hard surfaces, which then absorbs the radiation and releases it at night. So the focus is actually reducing the urban heat island effect and not reducing climate change, obviously, because we cannot reduce the global the increase of temperatures. So our focus is to reduce temperatures between 2 and 8 degrees, which is precisely the increase due to the urban heat island effect. Next. Next, Megan. So the Penang program was very fortunate to have won the Climaton Global Cities Award in 2020. So we're very happy with that. It's an award given by Climate Kick. And also in October 2020, the Penang program was endorsed to receive $10 million for implementation from the Adaptation Fund. With the monetary award of the Climaton Global Cities Award, which is a monetary award of 60,000 euros, we are developing the climate resilient street tree species study for Malaysia in order to select species that will be more resilient to the coming changes. Thank you very much. Back to you, Pablo.
Well, thank you very much, Sophia. Very impressive figures. Congratulations for such a good progress and a very integrated approach towards adaptations in cities. The climate adaptation program seems to be very mature, and I see quite interesting and inspiring examples also for the discussion afterwards, especially with regards to the cooperation with private owners and the grants model that you have just showcased. Anyway, so we'll keep it there for the discussion, and I'm going to hand over now to our third speaker. We have 4 speakers in total, so 2 solutions from Asia that we just saw, from Penang in Malaysia, and then from Seoul before, and now we're handing over to Imanol and his colleagues. Imanol managed the Center for Environmental Studies at Vitoria-Gasteiz, and so Imanol, please, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, good evening, everybody. Greetings from Vitoria-Gasteiz. I'll be very happy if you could move to the next slide. Yeah, thanks. Okay, let me guide you in the next 5 minutes through what we are doing in our city of Vitoria-Gasteiz. We added this slide to show you where we are located and how the city looks like from above, right? So if you see on the little map there on the upper right corner, we are in the Basque Country. We are the administrative capital of the Basque Country, which is a region in Spain. We have a city that looks like, as you see in the picture, of 255,000 inhabitants, a municipality area that exceeds much farther and beyond what the city boundaries are. In total, we have 276 square kilometers. There is a square missing on the slide, sorry, and a density of around 46 homes per hectare and 100 inhabitants per hectare. You see the city on the picture has a radius of around 3 to 4 or 5 kilometers, depending on where on the corner, and quite compact, very little urban sprawl, and a medieval town in the very center of the city. Next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. The city has been pushing already for 30 years many environmental programs, many environmental projects, strategic, including them in the strategic planning of the city, and we got some attention for that. Here we just put some logos of awards and prizes that the city got in the last decades. To mention two of them, I'd like to mention the European Green Capital Award that we got in 2012, and 2 years ago we were also awarded with the Global Green City Award by UN Habitat. Next slide, please. Good. Here now on the next 3 slides, I like to guide you or show you how we try to understand, and we understand actually, not try, natural systems as elements to direct and enforce 2 objectives, right? The first one would be to increase the resilience of the city towards climate change. And the second one would be to strengthen the attachment and understanding of nature by inhabitants of our city, right? So to increase that biophilia aspect. Here, the 3 elements that you see on this picture, I'd like you to focus on the map on the right side. We see the green infrastructure that we are building in our city, right? These are a series of consecutive projects that have been linked by this green ring, for which our city is famous for. And this is a green park that limits the edge of the city, right? You can see it on that picture. In that green ring, you can also identify some very big green areas. Those are our big peri-urban parks. And all of them have been pushed or motivated or incentivized by different environmental purposes or goals, right? Such as flood risk, solving some flooding problems that we have on the north, eastern part of the city. They're the biggest part that you see on the northeast. This is a recovered wetland area that solved us a lot of flooding problems that we had in the industrial sites there on the north. We also worked a lot on degraded lands and recover them into parks. Those are more the western parts that we see there. Water pollution. We have a river that crosses the city on the north, and we have some pollution issues there. And through NBS natural-based solutions, we also target that, and biodiversity loss, and through these projects, biodiversity recovery programs that have been also very successful, getting some of the highest densities for endangered species in Europe. So these are very good projects that we have. So yeah, next slide, please. Now on the next slide, I'd like to show you how we are building this green infrastructure strategy, so to say, right? We have a green infrastructure strategy that consists of over 100 projects that are shown on that map on the bottom right corner of the screen. Those are most of them already finalized projects. Some of them are ongoing projects, and they are all meant to strengthen this network of green areas that we have in the city, right? So we build a green belt around the city, and now what we are working on is to include or to make this nature enter into the city also by some, let's call them ecological urban corridors, right? So if you remember now, looking now to the picture on the left, this scheme of the city, if you remember on the very first picture, we saw this 3 kilometers radius of the city, right? So here on the upper, on the, I don't know if you see the cursor, maybe not, the medieval city, you can see it on the right side of that left picture. This is the very center of the city, and we, as we move to the left, we get out of the city, right? So the profile, the urban profile of the city changes very much as we move towards the outskirts of the city. And for each specific profile, we are aiming at some functions or some purposes or that are numbered there underneath, right? So for example, at the outskirts of the city, we aim through our interventions to increase biodiversity, whereas on the central part of the city, in the medieval part, we are aiming at urban rehabilitation and creation of micro landscapes due to the urban density of the neighborhood. So in a way, the message here is the urban infrastructure that we are doing in each area of the city targets and merges a bit in a way with the urban tissue that the neighborhood allows. Here, one of the challenges or one of the dreams, I like to say, that we have at the moment is to include or to increase the participation and involvement of citizens in the maintenance of this green infrastructure. So far, this has always been a task of the municipality. Now we are more and more realizing that this needs to be done together with the citizens. So we are now starting some pilot projects in the medieval town, especially, to see how we can increase this involvement of neighbors and empower them so that they are also in charge of keeping that tree alive or those flowers watered, right? So this is an ongoing project now. Next slide, please. Please, next slide. Yes. Okay, and here this slide summarizes or gives you some impressions of interventions that were done in the city. And I mentioned them very briefly, and afterwards at the lower part, we numbered some of the ongoing projects or next steps that we have identified, right? So interventions, you see here, these are more outskirt pictures, how we are increasing biodiversity through increasing pollinators, presence of pollinizers by targeting specific flowers. We also recovered degraded streams of rivers. You see it where it says the second box, increase of ecological connectivity. There at the back, you see a river that was completely degraded and canalized, and we renaturalized it. We also recovered on the third block, on the lower picture, you will see a little stream. This was a canalized former stream, river that we had, and now we've surfaced it. This is one of the main avenues in the center of the city, etc., right? We also work on urban allotments, some very good examples of micro landscapes at the most right picture there in the old park, etc. Good. And next steps that we are aiming at working at the moment are, we want to visualize all this in a very interactive platform online that any citizens, researchers, universities, interested colleagues from other cities can also have a very a quick look of what we've done and how this is impacting different ecosystem services per neighborhood, right? We also, as I mentioned already, we want to empower citizens so that they participate more in the maintenance of green infrastructure. And we are starting a very interesting project to renaturalize school playgrounds. In the last decades, we mainly put asphalt in our school playgrounds, and now we want to change that habit and bring some more green. And as I already mentioned, again, visualizing the ecosystem services so that we can increase that awareness of the inhabitants. Finished. Thank you very much for your attention.
Yeah, thank you very much, Manuel. Went a bit over time, but I think the contents were so interesting, as well as the other presentations before, of course. I see very concrete steps here for maybe pilot areas for cooperation, including the visualization that you just mentioned, the visualization tools, citizens empowerment possibilities. So we can keep that for discussion. Now let's give the 5 last minutes to Marino before we go into a very short discussion. Marino is basically from Bologna Metropolitan City. He's the head of research, innovation, and European projects. And Marino, the floor is yours. Thanks very much for being with us.
Many thanks for your kind invitation, Pablo. And I am here with my colleague Elisa Spada, representative of the municipality of Imola, and Gabriele Meluzzi, delegate of the Nuovo Circondario Molese. I would like to shortly present some activity of the Nuovo Circondario Molese in the metropolitan city of Bologna in the field of natural-based solution. We work by many times on these topics. Something about the east area of the metropolitan city, the Imolese area. Nuovo Circondario is an association of municipalities, of 10 municipalities of the eastern area of the metropolitan city of Bologna, over 100,000 inhabitants. The overall metropolitan city is 1 million of inhabitants. Nuovo Circondario, NCI is characterized by important research center and university. And the sustainability is, of course, a priority for our territory and for our municipalities. We are focusing our activity in the sector of the nature-based solution and the smart sustainable city, where the innovative and technological aspect can be analyzed with also the impact on the environment. Next slide, please. I would like to give some insight. Next slide, Megan, if possible. Many thanks. About some relevant project of this area, and I ask for the first slide the support of my colleague Elisa Spada. She presented last week an innovative map of the network of park in the center of the city, and this is a concrete for over 40 gardens are located in Imola, in the center, the historical center of Imola, and this represents an important network of green area, and this could concretely support the city to the reduction of the urban heat island. This is an example of how we can invest in the green area, and it is also important to this the communication to the citizen. But if Elisa want to add something, I ask.
Yes, thank you, Marino. Good morning good morning to all. My name is Elisa Spada, and I'm assessor for the environment and the sustainable mobility of the municipality of Imola. In this map, we can look at the relationship between the public space and the green spaces and the sustainable mobility, particularly the walking and the bike path. This map, created by the illustrator Monica Gori, show the social value of the public green spaces and show particularly the aspect of the green spaces about a place of meeting and inclusion. For us is very important, this. And this map show also another character about the public space. The relationship with the sustainable mobility. This is important for us because the politically of the environment is really linked, and for us the green infrastructure is very linked with the sustainable mobility. With this green infrastructure that systemized all the green area, urban park, garden, reforestation area, we can make different functions: ecological, connecting natural elements, improving the environmental quality and biodiversity of the city; landscaping, by connecting open space; accessibility, by safely connecting recreational, school and the work activity through pedestrian and cycle paths; and connection with the peri-urban spaces, integrating the countryside with the urban environment, reducing habitat fragmentation. This system contributes to improving the resilience of the city to its island phenomena, intense rain events, thermo-hygrometric comfort of people, sociability and usability of public spaces, and healthy lifestyle. And thank you to all, and I give the word
many thanks,
my
Elisa,
colleague
for your contribution, and we can go ahead with the next slide. Of course, next slide, please, Megan.
Yeah, there is a short time delay.
Broadcast
from Korea.
Okay. Elisa talked about the investment and the project in the center of the city, but it's really important the experiment in the industrial area. One relevant project, and we would like share this project with our colleague in South East Asia, Penang and in Korea, because this is a project related to the eco-industrial park. As you know, eco-industrial park is the future of the industrial area. And now in Imola, we are trying to experiment some project with the use of the garden to give a new perspective to the industrial area and a green shape to this important part of the city. And we are working to set up a new project in this industrial area, and also to experiment something about the industrial symbiosis. As you know, is a really relevant idea of circular economy in the industrial sector, and we try to experiment in this part of the metropolitan area some projects related with the circular economy and the industrial symbiosis. And we are looking for cooperation in the area of our city of Asia, our twin city of Asia. Next slide, please. We are also in this area. In this slide you can see the project for the urban reforestation in an important part of Imola. Imola is located an important racetrack for the Formula 1 race, and is an important area also for the environmental aspect, and we are investing in this phase for the reforestation of this area. But we are also investing for a new, really innovative project of research center. I would like to share this idea with my colleague of South Korea, with the public company for the environment, Konami, and the University of Bologna, and we are trying to realize here the Motor Valley. You know, Imola is part of the Motor Valley of the Emilia-Romagna region, and innovative center for the alternative car, the green car and the car with environmental low impact on the environment. And so, and this center will be located, I guess, in the racetrack of Enzo e Dino Ferrari. You know, Motor Valley near Imola, there is Ferrari, there is Lamborghini, there is Pagani, there is important Ducati, important company of automotive and motor company. Okay, so we try to
sorry, Marina,
also this. Yes.
Sorry, Marina, I have to ask you to come to an end because it's nearly 10 minutes
okay.
and we have to move to the
next slide, please. And I would like to give the floor for the last part to my colleague of representative of the NCI. Gabriele Meluzzi is the delegate to NCI to present the project in Circondario and Fontaneggi. Is the mayor of Fontaneggi. It's important the commitment and the involvement of the politician in this process.
Thank you. Thank you, Marina. I'll try to be very quick. As you can see from the presentation, the main topics we are focusing in the Nuovo Circondario Molese are urban forestry, urban regeneration and mending, that are also two of the topics that Renzo Piana and Stefano Boeri are focusing about in their works. And this is what we are trying to do. Also, Nuovo Circondario Molese, as I said in the previous meeting, is a collection of cities and small villages. So we need to focus on different topics, because what can work in Imola, that is a big city, obviously it doesn't work in the small centers, and so we need to focus on the big scale project and on the small scale project. And so what you can see in this slide is how we are focusing also on the small scale. There is a project we are showing here, and is about mending, so about the renovation of spaces. This is a school in Fontanellice, and there's an ongoing project about the renovation of all the outside spaces and all the green area surrounding the buildings. And there is also a project you can see below on the lower part of the slide, that is about reforestation of a green area around a big industrial area in a small village called Mordano. And so this is to say that we need to work on the big reforestation projects, on the big scale project, and also on the small scale. And as you can see in this slide, we also focused on the project that our region, Emilia-Romagna, is developing, that is called Roots for the Future. And the aim is to plant 4 million trees in the next 5 years. And what we are trying to do in our territory is to stick to this project and to develop our green infrastructure along with the purpose of our region.
Next slide.
Thank you very much. I have to ask you to come to an end because it's already 15 minutes nearly, and we have to move to the next. I don't know, Marina, if I may.
Next slide, please. You can,
stai lì forse siamo visti una volta, te. Gianluca.
Microphone on, sorry.
Ciao cara, buongiorno.
Sai che non ti rendi conto del clima?
No, c'ho il...
Qui nella Valle del Sacco.
C'ho il...
Okay, now I think, please, now we can
c'è Edoardo, vedo? Che mi ha chiamato.
I colleghi di Roma, sentiamo Romani.
Megan, can you please mute the colleagues who is speaking there?
The colleague of Rome, please. So, the colleague of Rome, please mute your phone. So I finished my presentation. Of course, there are many projects, life projects funded by you and other projects You can go ahead with the last slide. I think
me,
in this,
Marino?
okay. I think we can share this project the next
We are quite over time, and the presentation, although it's extremely interesting, has gone on for approximately 15.
Okay, many thanks.
Thank you very much, Marino, for this. I see also very good points here. The industrial park, the Motor Valley, of course, everything related to participatory planning, tree planting. Good luck there. Very ambitious goal. So let's move ahead to the next panel, after which we're going to have a discussion about how to keep working together on this based on these good experiences. Megan, back to you, please. Megan? Megan, I think is gone or muted. So, colleagues from CityNet, Yogyun, are you there? Hello. Seems to be a problem there with the colleagues. So Jens, maybe you can go straight ahead. With the second panel.
Of course, I'm happy to. Before Megan comes in. So I'm Jens Blei. I am with IURC Asia and Australasia. I'm based in Hamburg, Germany. And our next panel is on water retention infrastructure for heavy rainfall and flooding. We know that we are under time pressure, so I will change the format slightly. Instead of having a discussion, I have guiding questions. And maybe if Megan is not there, I can actually share my screen. It makes it easier for all of you. So we will have a 3-minute presentation. So just a lightning presentation from 5 cities, and from Busan, from Surat, from Dublin, from Rotterdam, and from Aarhus. And instead of the discussion, I will ask a question at the end of each presentation. And you can see we are really focused on potential joint pilots. So the guiding questions that I'll be coming from is, what kind of thematic area of water management do you prefer to pilot in? Do you have current and planned projects that are a good starting point for a joint pilot? What do you seek and what do you offer to your partner city or cities in those kind of pilots? And an overriding question, everything we do in the European Union at the moment is, are citizens engaged in the co-design process? So from that's our point of view. I have to let you know that my city, Hamburg, Germany, is being picked by the Times Magazine of having disappeared by the year 2150. So I'm extremely interested in listening to what our presenters have to say. So let's go straight to the presentations. And the first one is from Busan. And I'm not sure if Megan is available or if the presentation can be shared.
I will share for you.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, I am moving into it. Give me a moment. Okay.
So kindly introduce our first speaker from Busan.
Yes, of course. Give me a moment, please. All right.
Start the presentation, please.
I'm sorry. I had a bit of a technical error with the Zoom, and it decided it didn't like me very much. So apologies for the technical delay.
We can also share.
But let me give a quick introduction to the panelists for today. We're pleased to have Mr. Chol Woo-sung from the Busan Metropolitan Government in Korea, Mr. Vishal Shah from the Sarvajanik University in Surat, India, Ms. Mary Liz Walsh and Mr. Neil Higgins from Dublin City Council in Ireland, Mr. Korean Gabrad from Rotterdam, the Netherlands, and finally Mr. Toru Omiya from the town of Obuse in Japan. And although Jens has already kindly, Pablo and Jens have kindly helped smooth over the technical error, I'd like to introduce our moderator for this panel, Mr. Jens Blei. He is the Cluster Manager for Smart City and Digitalization at IURC Asia and Australasia. So without further ado, I would like to invite our first presenter, Mr. Chol Woo-sung, to share his presentation. Sorry, but
안녕하십니까. 저는 부산시의 송철우라고 합니다. 지금부터 발표를 시작하도록 하겠습니다. Next.
Hello, I am Sokchar Oh from Busan City. I'm going to present the projects in Busan. If you look at the map on the right side, Busan is the east southern part of South Korea. So this is highlighted in red with 3.4 million population. Busan is the second largest city in the country. And as you can see from the map, it is surrounded by seas. So, and it is a very important port city, and there's a lot of lights in the night. And surrounding the city, there are a lot of apartments, residential buildings. And some of the photos below is showing the aging pipelines. So Busan was not designed when it was first introduced. So many refugees from the Korean War ended up in the city. That is why the city faces various challenges. And recently we are witnessing heavy rainfalls. So we have a high level of rainfall throughout the year. And because of that, sudden rainfall has happened in the city. And there are many parts are inundated because of heavy rains. So waters, and with rising sea level due to a lot of water is dipped into the city. So as you can see from the photos, there are many things inundated. This is the result of a heavy rainfall, and this is the photo from the past 3 years. Heavy rainfall in a very short period of time, which has led to enormous damage to the city. So we have some countermeasures to address these issues. So for structural measures, in order to prevent inundation of the parts of the city, we have many ongoing projects. So from the 3 aspects, we are taking our countermeasures. I believe these measures are being used by many cities across the world. First is structural measure. And in order to manage natural disasters, we also have non-structural measures. And also we have institutional measures to support such structural and non-structural measures. So structural measures that we have include securing water pipes so that rainwater runoff is prevented from the city. So this is the map of the city, and there are many projects that are ongoing by the city. Some of them are finished and others are ongoing projects. And according to our solutions, we have projects in 83 districts with a lot of investment budget. So as for non-structural measures, we have integrated management system for natural disasters, especially for urban flooding. So real time, we can provide information to citizens which parts of the city are damaged by flooding. So we are providing information to citizens, a little bit of prediction. And when the natural disaster happens, we are informing citizens of the exact locations. So this is about the management system for urban flooding managed by Busan City. So we have CCTVs, and we also letting citizens know which parts of the cities are being damaged by flooding. And this is the leaflets on the disaster information maps. So when the disasters happen, we are providing these kinds of leaflets to citizens. So all this information is available on smartphone apps. So along with structural and non-structural measures, we also have other countermeasures that include institutional measures. And as part of that, we are continuously working for amending laws and enforcement and to improve institutions that are in place. So this is about what we are today in the city. And beyond the existing situation, we are looking forward to the future for better city, Busan. So Busan, like I said, is surrounded by sea. And we believe Busan City can work together with UN Habitat and other organizations for marine subjects. So we are looking forward for future cooperations with global institutions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. And I can already see that there in the non-structural measures, I'm absolutely sure it resonates with, for example, Dublin and Rotterdam, the data-driven management systems and how you share. Also citizen engagement, you showed the information flow. It will be also interesting to hear about in one of the next conversations, how this feeds back into the system. Without further ado, we would like now to have we're going to India, and we have Mr. Shah from Surat presenting his perspectives. Mr. Shah, please kindly
good afternoon.
Join us.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you very much. I'm going to present today a very unique case of Water Plaza in Surat. That has kind of come across as a project jointly done between the Surat Municipal Corporation and the Rotterdam Municipal Corporation. It was a sort of a sister city initiative that started as a part of the 100 Resilient City program, and then was carried forward to the IUC program, and then finally now we are pursuing this project in as a pilot project in the city of Surat. Surat is a city which is located on the western coast of India, and it is a very fast growing city with issues of urban flooding and rainfall, and also groundwater depletion at the same time. Pollution of inland water bodies is another major concern for the city of Surat. Though it is located next to a perennial river, but still it faces problem due to the increasing population of the city, which is currently somewhere around 7 million people. It has an average rainfall of around 1200 mm per year, and to just make you aware, this rainfall takes place within a span of 60 days to 90 days in the months of July, August, and September, and at times also stretches in October. So there is concentrated rainfall, and the problem that we were facing was that we were not able to capture this water, fresh water, and ultimately, because Surat is located on the estuary of the river and the sea, the fresh water getting to us through rainfall used to immediately go to the sea. So we wanted to kind of have a win-win situation wherein we can also store water during these less period of time of rainfall, and at the same time recharge the groundwater, which is getting depleted due to the extraction of the groundwater. The changing pattern of rainfall and discharge from the nearby dam also at times create flooding conditions in the low-lying areas of the city. And I would also like to make you aware that in this part of the world, water is a very sacred element, and there are a lot of rituals, as you can see in the last portion. You can see in the culture portion, there are a lot of festivals and rituals which are associated to water, including immersion of idols and other things, which in turn also creates pollution. So there are a lot of measures parallelly which needed to be taken. Next slide, please. And that's why we started kind of looking into water plazas as one of the major concern. These are two very interesting diagrams. On the left, all the small circles and the larger circles are trying to indicate the presence of village lakes or water bodies that are there as a part of the urban development authority area of Surat. Since almost now 15 to 17 years, I have been working on a lot of such water body projects. And when I came across this entire program of Water Plaza that Rotterdam has been running, we kind of also adopted the artificial water retention areas along with the natural retention areas. And we are planning as a part of the municipal corporation's initiative to network all these things. As a pilot project, you can see on the right side image, there are 7 to 8 such water plazas that are identified as a site in here, and the north zone area is been selected for having the first water plaza, and we have already initiated the paperwork and have reached halfway for executing this pilot project. Next slide, please. So which we call as Khel Kund, and it's a Hindi word. Khel means play, and Kund means a traditional water body, which always used to be there as a part of the water conservation system of the dry and the arid part of the Indian architecture. So these water body that are kind of planned as artificial retention ponds were stacked with various activities, including rituals, so that the other water bodies are not polluted. They also act as water catchment from the surrounding terraces and surrounding areas, so they kind of become water retention areas. And in the dry season, they can be utilized as social gathering and playgrounds. Now, these are planned as neighborhood initiatives, and interweaving of socio-cultural activities is also taken as one of the important aspects. So this particular water plaza that you see in this image is the artistic imagination of what sort of design it is going to have, which is very much influenced from the traditional Indian architecture, but at the same time carries a lot of learning from what we had from the visit to Rotterdam and similar projects that were done by the Rotterdam Gemeente. So we are also trying to bring in the traditional wisdom of water conservation along with the global technology and global aspirations and the changing lifestyle of people. So I hereby kind of end my presentation, and this Water Plaza is hopefully going to come to reality in another 1 year or so. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shaw. Can you enlighten us just for a minute of how your cooperation with Rotterdam came to be, and how did it focus on the design? Did you have engineering exchanges? Just for us to understand, because this could carry over into our new IURC phase.
Yes. And fortunately, we also have Corian from Rotterdam, who is going to present after a couple of presentation. So he will also enlighten us on the same. But Surat, Rotterdam are sister cities as far as water management is concerned, as a part of the resilient city, 100 resilient cities identified in the world. And since almost now 5 to 6 years, there have been exchange of ideas, exchange of expertise, visits to both the places by the delegates, including politically elected people, the bureaucrats, and also the consultants in design and engineering field. So there has been a constant interaction and sharing of knowledge that has happened, and that's how these projects have come in being.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now, we're not going straight to Rotterdam. We're going actually to Dublin. And I'm not quite sure, Mary-Liz or Neil, who's going to pick up the presentation first. Please show us your perspective.
Myself. Sure.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having us speak here today. We're learning a lot from everybody else's presentations. It's very interesting. Thank you. So I'm going to just give, I suppose, a whistle-stop tour as to where we're at the moment in Dublin City with respect to the management of flooding, climate change adaptation, and I suppose linking these elements together with the Water Framework Directive legislation in Europe. So just on the left here, I have some photos from a small urban river called the Camac. It has been the focus of several case studies and projects to date. The photo on the left illustrates, I suppose, the extent to which this little urban river has been modified over time as it passes through an historic urban centre here in Chicor, and the challenges, I suppose, that we face now on account of those historic modifications. The photo then in the centre is taken from the same river, but much further upstream, where the status under the Water Framework Directive is considered to be good. So I'm using the two photos side by side, I suppose, to illustrate the difference between the state of the river at those two locations. On the left, the river, as you can see, has been channelized, it's been straightened, it's been narrowed, and this dates back to a time when the Camac was used for power. There were up to 35 mills on along the course of the river at a point in its history. These same modifications now, when we consider the river in flood conditions, you can just imagine that torrent of water coming through there, and that narrowed section forcing the water to rise up as it powers through that section. So I use this often as an illustration, I suppose, of how a river in its natural state might behave under those same conditions. And the photo in the center, as you can see, if a flood was to come through here, there is so much more space for the flood waters to come down through that section. So in effect, what Dublin City Council is trying to do we're putting strategies in place to effectively retrofit, I suppose, those conditions insofar as is possible into the city. Part of that challenge is in the identification of opportunities. Obviously, we have historic development, we've built heritage that has value, it's a vibrant city. So trying to identify opportunities and leverage those multi-benefits. The photo in the center, you can see in terms of biodiversity, the river is natural, it is able to flood its banks when it needs to, there's no restrictions, which is one of the key processes associated with natural rivers that we're trying to promote under the Water Framework Directive legislation. Erosion, deposition, you can see all that material, the heavy material in the riverbed. These, I suppose, are processes that again are measured under the Water Framework Directive. And as we're finding, the renaturalization of rivers in urban areas actually helps us to adapt for climate change also. The photo then to the right, we also have issues across the city with rainfall, flooding on account of rainfall, pluvial flooding, and also, as was mentioned earlier, in terms of capacities of the piped network. So I suppose there are two different aspects that we're addressing in Dublin City, and we're trying to do so, I suppose, in a very strategic manner. So trying to, in acknowledgement, I suppose, of the challenges posed by these policy changes, there's definitely there's a long-term vision, I suppose, required in order to deliver changes like this over time, and to be able to capture those opportunities when they present themselves. Next slide, please. So there's two projects underway in Dublin City at the moment. The first one is a project, we call it Planning the River Corridors. So we're embedding in our planning policies across the city river restoration aims and objectives, so that those opportunities can be captured over time. Again, in a city area, there's challenges posed by the fact that the land is owned both, some of the land is publicly owned, and certainly in the case of the Camach, a lot of that land is privately owned. So we need, I suppose, a multi-targeted approach in order, again, to capture those opportunities. So the cross section there to the top, you can see in the dotted line, this is a river where historical floodplains have been filled in over time for various reasons. And part of that, as I said earlier, was to generate fast flowing water to power mills. And again, that has left us with a more complicated flood regime today. So in our planning policies and to adapt for climate change, and also to deliver good ecological status or good ecological potential under the Water Framework Directive, this cross-section, I suppose, illustrates the changes that we need to see in our rivers in order to see gains under those two different agendas. So the recreation of, I suppose, if we're supporting natural processes within the river, lots of those features of a riverine landscape will be also allowed to re-establish themselves. So this diversity of habitats will be created by those processes when they're allowed to start again. The creation of wetlands is another typical riverine feature. It has benefits for flood risk management and also for biodiversity and climate adaptation and mitigation. We also have underway the Kamak River Flood Alleviation Scheme, which is a regional project across the whole catchment. The focus of that is flooding primarily, but again, in order to comply with the Water Framework Directive, we are embedding in those project briefs and activities the need for those measures to incorporate natural water retention measures, so that the amount of walls and hard infrastructure, embankments, etc., that are needed are minimized, and that opportunities to restore the river and create those flood risk management benefits are also incorporated into the scheme. The map just there at the bottom shows a mapping exercise that was carried out, also part of the Kamak Flood Alleviation Scheme. We're mapping the overland flows, the overland flow paths. As we know, I suppose in historic urban centres, the piped network is dominant. These overland flow paths are not altogether carrying water at the moment. Water is disappearing into gullies and into the piped network. And as we know, in historic urban areas, some of those pipe networks are very much limited, and the scope to increase the capacity of those is also limited on account of the extent to which urbanization has already occurred. So we're examining strategies and putting policies in place and gathering baseline data to in forward planning that overland flows and to keep surface water at the surface, also capturing those multi-benefits in relation to biodiversity, amenity, recreation and tourism. So these are the policies that we're pursuing in Dublin City Council, so that we can address flooding, fluvial flooding, pluvial flooding, and create a more beautiful environment for residents and workers in the city. And local communities have been very involved in this vision. I completed a visioning exercise with representatives of the community back in 2019, and they're hugely in favour of the renaturalisation of the river corridor. They're very aware of the multi-benefits that accrue with this kind of approach. So we're taking steps now to deliver that vision on their behalf. So over to
Yeah, Mary, this is a perfect point, because I was just going to come into a follow-up question. Is that a point where you see a collaboration with partner cities, that kind of future planning and visualization of where it needs to go? Is that a point of where you see a good joint pilot action?
Yes, I think that would be very, very interesting. So if other cities, if they're trying to put together, I suppose, a citywide plan to capture these benefits in the short, medium and long term, well, I'd be very, very interested. I've have some contacts in other cities where projects are happening, I suppose on a smaller scale, but certainly I would think that would be very much of interest to us.
Fantastic. We'll take you up on your word here.
And my colleague Neil has the third slide here. Sorry, just to hand over to Neil Higgins.
Hi,
And
everyone.
next slide.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay. Just following on from Mary Liz there, this is basically what we're trying to do. An exciting project is introducing rain gardens into the streets of Dublin. This is a photograph here of Suffolk Street, which is a street in the inner city of Dublin. It's a very, very busy street, one of our high pedestrian areas. This project is basically, if you can see to the left, that is a before picture, and to the right, bottom right, is a proposal to put in at least 3 rain gardens. The rain gardens will capture and store rainfall runoff. They will mitigate against flooding. They will remove pollutants in the runoff. They're also an attractive feature that can improve the open space of this area. They will boost the biodiversity of the city centre. and they're inexpensive to implement and also low maintenance. So this is a very exciting project, and we're hoping to introduce a number of these around Dublin City. And basically, we're trying to green the city and to provide a more climate resilient city. And this is, if you have any questions on this project.
Fantastic. What is the timeline of this project?
The timeline, this project should be implemented within the next year or two. And we hope
Fantastic.
to get we hope to get a research project on board to just assess how it progresses and how it captures the rainfall runoff and remove pollutants, and basically how it develops. And we hope to share that with a wider audience.
Fantastic. We love current and planned projects of that time scale, which fits IURC perfectly, and we'll take it into the next conversations. I do now not only want to I want to move down a little south to Rotterdam and get a second perspective, of course, on the collaboration with Surat, but of course also your own perspectives. Please welcome Koyan Gebrad.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for inviting us. I just gave a brief overview of some challenges and solutions we have in Rotterdam on flooding, but perhaps something about Rotterdam before I start giving some solutions. Rotterdam is a very line-laying city. As you can see, it's along a river, and even the largest port of Europe is not visible on this picture. It's on the east side of this, the west side of the city. But what is important to know is that a large part, I think about 70% of the city, is below sea level. So a lot of all the area you see more. A little bit from the river, you can. There is really we have to pump out all the rainwater, so it's a risk for flooding, especially with the climate change. But along the river banks, the land is higher and it's not protected by dikes. So. The dikes, and I have some pictures of it, are just going through the city, and that's also one of the challenges we have. Perhaps the next slide. What we have, in fact, two large challenges on flooding. The one is due to heavy rainfall, and on the left side you see a picture of a model we use to get an idea of the risks of flooding on streets, but also the risk of flooding of houses, and that's the blue label we use. That's an indication of the flooding risk of houses. So then we can plan and coordinate our actions more to prevent this flooding due to heavy rainfall. So that's based on a model, but you can see on the small pictures that there is already events that are really causing damage also along houses and in the public space. On the right hand, you see the flooding risk due to a storm surge, the risk of it. It looks very blue because this is a picture of the most when dikes could break through, then you have really deep floodings of polders, even more than 2, 3, 4 meters. So that's the reason why the dikes are so important in Rotterdam. But in the center, you see along the river, this area is lying higher, so it's less. There's less risk, but it's also not protected. So if there is a large storm surge and the barrier, which is on the western part of Rotterdam, eventually wouldn't work, then we have a large problem also in that areas. Next slide, please. Just some pictures of the way we are taking measures for that. And of course, the water plazas are already mentioned. That was an idea of using the public space in a more efficient way, just using plazas to store water temporarily. So that was the idea that started in 2008 or something, and now we are implementing more and more of this kind of plazas, smaller and bigger, but also underground storage, like the picture on the right hand that's in front of the central station, where we have an underground water storage, so water can be stored temporarily. And of course, we have a lot of, we try to infiltrate a lot of water, rainwater into the underground, where that is possible, because we have also a large part of the city has relatively high groundwater levels, but where it is possible, we try to replenish the groundwater. And of course, we, as I saw in other presentations, a lot of we try to add a lot of greening, because that's also on one hand for heat stress, but also for retaining water, and trying to that our sewer system will not overflow too much. And one example, I think the picture on top with the children, that's permeable pavement. We use more and more in the city, because that's also a way just to infiltrate water, rainwater into the ground, and that all those small and bigger measures help to have a more sponge city like city in Rotterdam. Just the next slide, and that are some examples of how dikes and levees are incorporated in the city. Sometimes you don't recognize the levees, because they're there, but you only can see when you go to the site and you see that it's protecting a lower lying area. But this is also directly a challenge for Rotterdam, because when we want to build along a dike, it's very difficult. And also when we want to strengthen or heighten the dikes, that's really a challenge, because there's no space anymore. So this is really one of the large challenges of Rotterdam in the next decade, I think, because we are building a lot in outdike areas, but we also have to protect our city with these barriers and structures. So we have twofold. It's on the one side, it's the outer dike area, which is can be flooding directly. So we have to look at measures, for instance, in buildings to protect for the water, and on the other side, it's the polder area we have to protect. So this is, in short, the challenges we have with water in the city, and of course we try to cope with this in an integrated way. Just in our adaptation strategy, these topics are integrated, and we try to get strategies that are fitting this purpose. I keep it with this. Thank you.
Koyan, thank you so much. And I think everyone can see how solution-driven, but at the same time, how coherent your approaches are in terms of overall city planning, but I also know from my own experience with citizen engagement and making it understandable and transparent. And it might be interesting for you, there are suddenly cities popping up that never had these issues before, like Christchurch. Yesterday in an IURC meeting in New Zealand, we learned about Christchurch after the earthquake, going down by 40 centimeters with vast areas now under sea level. They never really had to think about these solutions. So we'll be able to cross-share in the interregion of IURC Asia and Australasia with solutions and problems and challenges, I should say. Thank you very much, and we're looking forward to further exchanges.
Thank you.
Last but least, we go from our point of view, very east now to Japan, to Obusi. And I would love to invite Mr. Toru Omiya to share his perspectives as well.
Okay, thanks so much for your introduction. Finally, I'm going to present in a short minutes, like 3 minutes, within 3 minutes. I'm going to present about our challenges and the solutions, especially after we experienced the flood disaster in 2019. Next, please. So as you can see on the picture at the right side, this is our town. It's the picture from the sky. Actually, our town is not used to be unrelated to the disaster, but the largest typhoon in 2019 hit in our region and experienced flood waters over rivers. As you can see, for the first time in our town's history. And then in our town, there are more than like 1,000 people, inhabitants, had to evacuate it to the public shelters more than two nights. And then more than 100 houses and buildings were inundated by flood waters after this flood. So after experiencing this flood, almost every year, the largest typhoon in the history level, which is, how I say, informed by the national government, appears in Japan. And our town also have experienced disaster-grade rainfall every year since 2019. So, in the meantime, our challenges are really changing. Especially the question what we have to facing is that how we can adapt and manage to this situation occurred by climate change to reduce damages and save our residents. The next slide, please. So basically, what we are doing as a solutions are based on 3 themes. The first one is kind of construction phase, the development of water storage system, such as building more stable rivers, and then build more natural rivers and agricultural reservoirs. And of course, use water utilization dams effectively, which means before 2019, our region, there are so many different kinds of dams still existed, but there's not so many, like, how we say, cooperation between the governmental level. So we didn't utilize the dams effectively. The second theme is I think this is the most important thing, is that how we can strengthening relations and communications with all stakeholders along the river. So before 2019, we didn't have any like meetings or opportunity to communicate with each other in terms of the organization level. But after that, we start to set some webinars or meetings frequently among stakeholders, including the national government and also local government, and the NPO organization, which is tackling with the disasters. And then recently, we start to, this is kind of becoming standards to make timeline, we call timeline, which is action plans of all stakeholders for disasters. And of course, also open hotlines among supervisors and mayors of all municipalities along the river right now. The next slide, please. The third point is that how we can reduce damages in the case of flood, which means the first topic and the second topics are how we can prevent the flood to construct like more higher reviews or more the constructions. But the third one is even though we faced on the flood or such kind of disaster, how we can reduce damages. I mean, the people's lives. So especially in Japan, recently it's becoming more popular to make hazard map. I think it's the correct words in English, but we call this hazard map, which shows inundation expected areas, potentially, I would say, disaster areas, and the places of what kind of places is where the public shelters are located in the towns. Not just making this hazard map, but also distribute this to all houses and holding so many workshops to promote, let them know and promote my timeline, which is action plans for each families in the case of flood. For example, like how the family members act when the typhoon is occurring in the sea and then approaching to Japan. So and then what kind of things that we have to prepare for right before the typhoon is approaching. And then also our local level, government tries to hold so many evacuation practices with citizens and neighborhood community associations every year to try to inform them what kind of things we have to do and what kind of things that neighborhood community associations have to do. So it's kind of like to practice role between us. So I think from our experience from the 2019's typhoon, we think about I think the most important thing is that sharing information and cooperation with all stakeholders, which is very key factors to minimize disaster damage. Flood is it's kind of how I say. Even though we make so many constructions, it's really difficult to save the inhabitants' lives. But if we collaborate or make some cooperation with each of the organizations, it's really easier for us to act in the case of flood. So yeah, that's all. Thank you so much.
Fantastic, fantastic. Let me just for closing of this panel before I hand over to Pablo, say thank you to all 5 presenters. And we saw there are district level plannings that have in Busan to, as you just mentioned, very stakeholder driven engagement, including the citizens as stakeholders. And that makes it more tangible and breakable to pilot projects. I'm very much looking forward to those kind of discussions within the solutions that we've learned from Dublin and from Surat and from Rotterdam. So over to you, Pablo.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jens. Thank you very much to all the speakers for this very, very overwhelming conversation. It might be for many of you, of course, that we're having a lot of best practices, but I think the topic is a very, very timely one within the IURC, so to say, world, let's put it this way. And that's the reason why we got a very strong interest from the pilot cities to present the best practices, and we're very, very happy about it. I think we had in the first panel also very good discussion about potential pilot projects. So, and normally also take into account that we would normally meet on site, probably in one of the non-EU countries which were mentioned here, and we would have caused, of course, a lot of maybe unnecessary CO2 emissions. Therefore, I please ask you to have some understanding for the time we went over, for the overtime we just had. But let me now focus on the next steps. As I mentioned at the very beginning, the point of the IURC is basically that we are helping, we are having these 2 different channels of cooperation, the bilateral one in which you are dealing with a specific country and with a specific city, mostly within that country. And the other one is thematic one. So in the thematic ones, we have on the one hand side, if you go to our website, to the IURC website, you will see there the thematic networks for collaboration. I can just show them in a second, and then you will see the different subgroups, and within the subgroups, there will be also some resources which are available. So good information, so to say, as an information resource for you all. We will now summarize this discussion by making a matrix and sending it over to the cities that have, shown interest in joining this cluster and establishing subgroups for discussion. And the idea is there also to try to propose from our side some flagship projects that may be emulated, that may inspire other cities to follow, whether it's visualization, citizens engagement, or the different ones we just saw today. So the next steps will be, we will summarize this discussion, we will send you a matrix with who is doing what, the overview of best practices, and we will also show you the access to the website resources. And we really hope that to be able to identify some pilot actions that may be followed or implemented at the same time by different cities. Having said this, I would hand it back to Megan, and I would especially express my gratitude for the cities in Asia, which in Japan and Korea, it's quite late now. So thanks very much also for staying so long with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pablo. And thank you to Jens as well for moderating that excellent panel. Thank you so much to all the panelists who have participated in the webinar today. I was fascinated. I took so many notes on everything. There were so many great projects and ideas. And I just want to conclude today's session with, first of all, let's take a group photo to commemorate this first thematic webinar. So if everybody can turn on your camera so we can take a group photo, that would be wonderful. So I'll give everybody a few seconds just to turn on their camera, and then perhaps on the count of 3, we can take a group photo together. Just wait a little bit longer for everybody to be able to process it, and then, okay. So on the count of 3, everybody smile. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and shall we do one more? Okay.
Second page.
Oh, there's a second page? Okay.
There are 3 pages.
Oh, we have so many participants. There are 3 pages for the group photo. Okay. Shall we do one more then? Quick?
Yes.
Okay. So 1, 2, 3. Okay. So before we close, let me please express my sincere gratitude to, first of all, to the IURC team, Asia and Australasia, who have supported this webinar through either by helping us mobilize speakers or just in the coordination, but especially to Pablo and Jens, who have dedicated their time to moderate this session and to really help tie everything together back into the theme. I'd also like to extend my thanks to the team here at CityNet. There's a couple of people in the room here with me, and without them, definitely the technical aspect of this would have been very difficult. So thank you so much to my team here at CityNet. I'd also like to extend our thanks to the EUD, to Patrick and John, who participated by contributing and coordinating, and to set the scene, and also for heading and coordinating this program with the EUD. A huge thank you to all of the city panelists who participated. All 10 of you were amazing. We are so happy to hear from all of the different cities. Last but not least, I'd also like to extend a huge thank you to all the participants who stayed, even though we went like half an hour over time. It has been such a pleasure to have you here, and I hope that following the summary and the matrix, that we'll be able to establish some key partnerships and pilot actions together. I hope this set the scene for the following thematic webinars, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the rest of the thematic webinars and to engaging with all of you more, to seeing the new partnerships and pilot actions that will be born from this IURC project. Thank you so much to everybody. And this concludes our webinar for today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.